There she
Okay, just
is.
start by saying thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. I suppose we should start right at the beginning. How did you discover drag?
Oh my God. Wow. What a big old question. I don't know. I didn't really have like a moment where I remember like becoming Esther Parade,
Hmm.
you know? I think I I mean like I attribute a lot of like my recent I don't want to say success because that sounds really wanky. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, good. To be fair, I've seen Nikki Knockers' one, and she swears a lot, so great. Um, yeah, I don't want to say the word success because it sounds wanky, but like I attribute like a lot of my success in terms of like what I'm doing now, which is a lot more like queer-based work,
Hmm.
to lockdown because I had like a big like I had an amazing time in lockdown. Like I know that's like a really awful thing to say, but like I had such a
Hmm.
good time. Um, and I spent loads of it just like reconnecting to like queerness and like
Hmm.
sort of asking myself what like being queer means to me. Um, so maybe like 6 months before lockdown, I was working in New York on a project.
Wow.
Um, I know it's such like a big name drop. It's like oh, I was just working in New York and like you know living in Hamilton Heights, like no big deal. Like, it's fine. Like only for like a month. Um, but I remember like I had like so it was because my background is theatre making, right?
Hmm.
So when when I first graduated from Welsh College, my sort of avenue was like, right, I'm going to be a director. Like, I'm going to direct, I'm going to direct, I'm going to direct. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to write. I don't want to perform again. I trained as a performer, but I was like, I don't want to perform. I just want to write. I just want to direct. Don't want it's a Freudian slip. Um, so this thing was like a program. It was like 60 international directors from across the world. And I was there sort of like representing Wales type thing. And it was like a month and it was just like loads of directors and we all just sort of like worked together, do workshops together and stuff. And it was um there was a day where we were sort of like going around just like talking about what
Hmm.
our work was, like how we sort of embody ourselves in our work. I remember this guy was next to me, and he was this queer guy from Dubai who's this amazing artist and was like really, really passionate. And he was talking about the fact that where he's from, like if you make any sort of theatre that has any sort of political streak in it, you run the risk of being arrested. And he was like, you know, all of my work is therefore about politics, it's particularly about queer politics, like living in Dubai, where it's illegal to be gay. And he was like, yeah, I've been arrested 8 times just for like making theatre.
Hmm.
And then like I was next in the circle, and I was like, I like to do plays. Like I realized like I realized I'd spent sort of like 6 or 7 years. No, I've been working for like 6 or 7 years now, but I probably like 3 or 4 years at that point, making theatre work that didn't really like have any of me in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so my partner at the time came to visit me for like the last week that I was in New York, and I spent the whole rest of that time just like going to loads of queer space and like having a great time. And he arrived, and I was like, this is over. Like we had like a breakup in Central Park. It was like really dramatic. It was
Oh.
great. Um, and so then I got home and I was like, right, I'm gonna like 2020 is gonna be the year that I like make loads of queer theatre. And then
Hmm.
obviously COVID happened. So instead I spent that time like doing loads of like research and like reading loads about queer
Hmm.
history, like reading loads about like queer theories. And a big part of that was drag and
Yeah.
like discovering kind of like the roots of drag. And I kind of had, I think, within that, that's when I came up with the idea for Grandmother's Closet.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, I'm going to be perform. I have to perform it because it's so personal. And then and then yeah, we sort of got the funding and stuff for Grandmother's Closet when everything was starting to open up again. And it was around the time of like first developing Grandmother's Closet that I just decided that I wanted to like get myself into
Hmm.
horrible makeup one night. So like, I went out and bought like the cheapest makeup in the world from Boots and like yeah, I just got myself a dry and I looked like a fucking mess. And like wore one of my nana's dresses that was later then used in the
Hmm.
Grandmother's Closet promo shot. So the first dress that I ever wore in drag is the dress that's on the Grandmother's Closet poster,
Yeah.
which like as far as the Luke Hereford cinematic universe goes, is quite pleasing. Um, um, Oh my God, sorry. Like, I feel like I haven't answered this question at all. But yeah, it's somewhere around there,
Hmm.
I decided like, right, okay, I need a name. I don't really know what the shtick is going to be.
Hmm.
But I just started like shaving my beard and just having a mustache. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, well, what if I keep a mustache? But like the things that have always inspired me as a human, as well as as an artist,
Hmm.
is like more kind of like old school or like Broadway divas or like
Yeah.
Hollywood divas. So I was like, oh, so what if it in my head I was like, oh, what if it's like this perfect like Hollywood silhouette with like a mustache? I'm like, oh, that's really like genderqueer and
Hmm.
really fun. And yeah, so it came from there. Yeah, it came from there. And then I asked Polyamorous if she would help me do my makeup one day. And she did. And then that's sort of how she unofficially became my drag mum. And the rest is history, kid.
So you obviously
Wow, I can talk so much. It's good, isn't it?
you mentioned my grandmother's closet, but what was it like putting that show together? What was the
Yeah, I'm
experience?
just gonna like have my gin. It's really nice. Um, mm, did you see it? No.
No, I didn't,
Yes.
unfortunately.
No, you didn't see it. It's fine. What was it like putting it together? So it came from like obviously it's like I say obviously as if, but you haven't seen it, so maybe you don't know this, but it's like super super
Hmm. Yeah.
autobiographical, and it actually like the concept of it came from a real life thing that happened, which was at my dad's 60th birthday party. At the end, like my dad's birthday is like right at the end of the year. So it was like the end of 2019, so like December the 19th or something. So like really, really close to COVID
Hmm.
happening, right? Um, so December 2019, my dad's 60th birthday party, it was in like this. So I'm from like really small, like village Wales, like not and also like the kind of part of Wales where like it's close enough to England where a lot of the people who live here like pretend they're English. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like whenever my dad goes on holiday, it's like, oh yeah, we're English. And I'm like, Dad, we're fucking English. It's like always the thing. Um, so it was in like a proper like Vicar of Dibley-esque village hall. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
very like, you know, everyone there was white, like cold buffet, like all of everything that you can imagine that
Mhm.
party, it was. Um, and I was like, I've got to go to this thing. So I wore like three-piece black velvet outfit, like with like gold embroidery on it, like black eyeliner, and everyone's like, do you know, I'm like, who is like,
Yeah.
what is this? And um, my uncle, who's just like a proper like rugby bloke, we were outside having a cigarette, and he called me a then I was like, whoa, sorry, I should have said F slur. Can you bleep that out? Or that would be theatrical, wouldn't it, if you bleep that out?
I will
Yeah.
try my best.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to. You can leave it if you want. But so you call me a faggot and said it again. And I was like, whoa. I was like, that's wild. Like, I can't
Hmm.
believe he just did that. Um, and so then like the after party was at my nan's old house. And she doesn't live there anymore because she's living with dementia.
Hmm. I'm so
And
sorry.
she now lives, she's like in full-time care by my auntie, from my
Hmm.
auntie. Um, but my dad still works from the house. It's really weird. So my dad has like a garage which is like attached to the front of my nan's house.
Oh.
So everything in my nan's house is like there. All of her furniture is there, all of her clothes are there, everything is there.
Hmm.
All of the like she's got like 4 bedrooms in this beautiful, amazing house, and it's literally like a time capsule from the 70s. It's incredible.
Hmm.
Um, so we went there for like the after party, and I was like quite drunk and quite angry, and
Hmm.
the uncle was there. So I went upstairs, put one of her dresses on, and a fur coat and came down and I was like, hi everyone, like it's me, Luke. Like I'm of the family. And I was just
Hmm.
like basically like, rubbing it in his face and everyone's like having a great time.
Hmm.
And I was like, there's a play in this. Um, and then I pitched it to the Millennium Centre like a week later.
Wow.
And they were like, cool, let's maybe think about doing an R&D. And then COVID happened. So then I spent COVID sort of like writing it,
Hmm.
chased it up when things were starting to reopen. And yeah, we got it on in April 2022, which is really quick. Like making theatre is not that quick normally, like I think the timing was just really lucky because I pitched it to Peter Darnley, who had just come in to open the cabaret space. And this is the thing with Grandmother's Closet. It was always supposed to open the cabaret space. So it was always supposed to open the cabaret space. It was supposed to be February 2022, and then it was supposed to be April 2022. And they were like, "Oh, the space isn't ready, so we're going to put you in the Western." And then we were going to do it in September after Edinburgh 2022. Space still wasn't open, so then we didn't do it. It actually ended up doing it in cabaret until February 2023, which at that point, obviously, we've been doing it for like a year. And I was like, God, when is this over? I'm like, I don't know, but when I want to do something else. So yeah, I mean, it was wild, and the whole like, obviously, the point of the play is that it's about my relationship with my nan and how, like, you know, when I was a kid, I used to go to that house, go upstairs, put dresses on, perform in the living room, or like just spend the day chilling out in a dress, and how she was always the one in the family who was like, this is fine, this is great, this is fun, like, you know. So it's basically about allyship, right? And how obviously, and then there's the other layer of the fact that she is living with dementia, so she doesn't necessarily remember all those memories that I have. So the kind of the conceit of the play is like me reminding her of that, you know. And all of the dresses that are used in it are actually her dresses, which is I love as like a fact. Like telling people that is really lovely. You know, when anyone who came to see it was like, oh, you know, the dresses are great. And I was like, yeah, they're all hers. And like sort of like looking back on it, I'm like, if I ever did it again, like I need to like put that in the show somewhere, or like put it in the marketing somewhere, that it's all like authentic dresses from the 60s, some of which she made because she's like an incredible seamstress. Was an incredible seamstress. Obviously, she doesn't really make dresses these days. But yeah, the actual process of it, I think, like, obviously, it's kind of, I don't want to be super contrived and be like, oh yeah, it's really hard like writing a personal play, because like I had a really fun time writing it, and like I had a really fun time making it. And the reason I had such a fun time making it, and I think this is like a really important thing for like anyone to know about making a show that is a solo show, or anything that sort of resembles a solo show, is like it's never solo, because we had like a director who's one of my nearest and dearest friends, incredible performer, traditionally performer and writer, called Francois Pandolfo. And it was his first time directing, and it was my first time writing. So it was a really nice, like, sort of sharing of roles and like support thing. Philippa Mannion was our incredible stage manager. We had a musical director, we had a lighting designer, sound designer, like this huge team. And you look at the show and you're like, oh, it's you and a piano. Like, oh, how cute! Like, lovely one-person show. But there's so much more to it than. And that's the same. That I'm having that same experience with Polly and Esther. You know, like it on the page and on the marketing and on the website, it looks like it's just a me and Polly thing. But again, like corny phrase, but it takes a village to like get something like that on. So I just remember like having a really nice time, like working with some of my best pals on like. There was so many times like in sort of Run It Show, I was like, nobody cares about this. I'm just talking about my nan. Like it's so weird. Like it's so oddly specific. Do you know what I mean?
But then it's also really like relatable in the sense that that every person has one person, at least one, that you kind of are there to support you or have encouraged you in a certain way. Maybe not necessarily just in queerness, but in anything, you always have that one person you can go to.
Yeah, it's like number one cheerleaders, and that's a kind of like a it's like it was like she was the cheerleader and she was but also like quiet cheerleader. Do you know what I mean? Like never, you know, she wasn't the kind of ally who would like go to a pride parade and wear like rainbows.
Yeah.
Do you know, like she's not that ally. She's the ally who's just like doing it from the sidelines and just letting you be you from day one. Which is really important. And that is the universality of it. It's like I think I can't remember who said this to me, but it's like always stuck with me. But I think we spend a lot of time, like in theatre especially, trying to make things like universal, trying to make things relatable. And like actually the way to make something relatable, I think, is to make it like really, really specific. Like, and the example that this person gave me was Derry Girls, which is like so specifically about like a time and a place and a type of person that a lot of people won't know that person or know that history, but it's just like my partner is Brazilian, and he's obsessed with Dairy Girls. Like he's on his like fourth rewatch, and he's Brazilian, and like he doesn't get half the jokes, he doesn't get half the history, but it's like it's about the kinship, it's about the sisterhood, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's about like enjoying themselves even though they're living in this like tumultuous time. Like and I like that always rings true to me. I'm like, whenever I'm like, oh, is this too niche? I'm like, Dairy Girls. Do you know what I mean? Like, Dairy Girls. Like everyone loves Dairy Girls.
One of the things I've most recently seen you do is DJing. So how did you get into that?
No, don't come for me. I'm sorry, the reason I said don't come for me is because last night the fucking King's Jolene Dover's drag race, all my DJing software crashed and there was silence. Were you not in the room at this point?
I watched it.
Oh no, that's never happened to me. I'm a flawless DJ. I'm amazing. How did I get into DJing? I'm from the school of Nikki Knockers when it comes to DJing, who is my favorite person. Well, not my favorite person, but she's fine. Look, there she is. That's one of 3 Nikki Knockers framed pictures from the Kings that I have.
I have the full spread behind the screen.
You have every single one of them?
The full, yeah.
No way. How did she give you them?
At Pride, yeah. She gave everyone a copy to wave and then got really embarrassed when everyone had her photo in the audience.
Was that last year's Pride?
Yeah, last year.
Oh my God. Oh, yeah, I know. I remember that. Yeah. Oh my God, she's amazing. Like, she's such a meme. I'm obsessed with her. So yeah, Nikki Knockers, like, I know I make a joke saying like I'm from the school of Nikki Knockers, but like no, seriously, I am. Like she's taught me loads about DJing, just in terms of like how to read a room.
Yeah.
She's been really good at. And you know, I had my first time DJing Pulse last week, which was like running a marathon because it was like 7 hours of DJing, which is wild. And I just remember messaging her and I was like, how do you like sustain 7 hours? And she was like, and she just replied, was like, Automix babe kiss. And I'm like, great. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm like, that's actually like, I know that sounds like really like cop-outy, but that's actually really good advice. Like you don't have to be, I think you don't have to be in the booth for 7 hours just like slaving away. Like especially in Pulse, like it's not busy until like 2 o'clock in the morning, you know? So it's so like she just in terms of like reading a room and like she's actually been really helpful. But I don't know how I got into it. Like I've always loved music. And I think like my sort of in terms of like where DJing is going to go for me, I don't really know. I don't really see myself like I don't really know like how I guess there's a world where I could like go off and like really pursue it and like start DJing out of drag as well. If I maybe worked on it a bit more. But I just feel like music and I really I like the game of it. Like I like the game of like, okay, I've got this song playing. I've got like all my songs on a list. Like what's gonna go with this? Wow, like what's gonna like be a real surprise, like what's gonna like take everyone by surprise, you know, if someone's like getting down and dirty to Rihanna and then like you put steps on, like that's sometimes people really love that, do you know what I mean, like that contrast or whatever. So I like that game of it. I like the game of like I'm gonna try and beat match this. I really like it. It's real fun. And Kings have been really very like welcoming into the fold, you know. It's been really nice to like stretch a new muscle, I think.
Musical experience kind of helped you in DJing. Do you think that sort of experience in the theatre and music and that sort of stuff has it helped you?
I think I'm like sort of like I've never been like technically musical. Like I've never been able to read music in the sense of like being in the sense of like a sight reader or like a pianist would. I said pianist, by the way, not pianist. But I like a couple of friends of mine who were like musicians, they're like, oh, you're just sort of like instinctively quite musical, which maybe isn't always reflected in my singing if you come and see me on the third brunch of the day at Tonight Josephine. But I think like I think I've got like I'm quite good with rhythm. I'm quite good with like pitching and stuff, and like so I say that now. I've just got images of certain people watching this and being like, no, you're not. But yeah, I think I'm sort of instinctively quite musical, but I don't think it comes from any sort of. I think it just comes from like having grown up with music and like having, especially like having grown up with musical theatre, because you're like a musical theatre baby, aren't you? Like that's your shtick, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that. I want to know more about you. Is this a date? Yay!
Yeah. But unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about me. But I'm going to stick to you just for now.
All right, fine.
Most recently, you put on your own show in bed with Esther Parade. So where did that come
Yeah,
from?
that was really that was like a proper like labor of love thing in terms of like that's always what that's basically like to do a show like that was like my dream since starting drag. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I thought drag when I first started would be like, okay, cool. Like I'm gonna like do a solo cabaret night where I get to like step onto the stage and like there's gonna be a piano and I'm gonna be backlit and it's gonna be beautiful and I'm gonna be able to sing like weird Barbra Streisand songs that nobody's heard of and like obviously the reality is like you have to sing ABBA or like everyone's gonna leave. Like
Yeah.
and so like I'm in my third year of doing drag now, so I guess like getting a bit of a name for myself in the scene and like also cabaret being an option as a space to do something like that. Um, and also like having the experience of like the showmanship on stage to host. Do you know what I mean? And like, yeah, I think sort of like I don't want to be like, oh, my whole drag career has been building up to that moment, but like that's kind of if I could do that something like that every week in drag, that would be my dream. But
Yeah.
I know that it's not sustainable and it's not realistic and it's not commercial. But I mean, I just loved like piecing the set list together. Like that was the thing for me. And to sort of like clarify on the labor of love a bit more, like I grew up listening to, I grew up listening to musical theatre. But like specifically, I always remember being really enamored with sort of like live cabaret albums. So the sort of my three on rotation were Patti LuPone live at Les Mouches, which have you ever listened to it?
I haven't, no.
As a musical theatre fan, you have to listen to it because it's a concert resident. Like this is so nerdy, but it's a concert residency that she did every Sunday night while she was in Evita. So it's like so she's just done like a full week of shows at Evita, and then she like goes to this club in New York at like midnight and like does a cabaret, and she did that every week for like 8 months or something. And she's obviously like coked off her tits on it. It's amazing, and she's just like and she's Patti LuPone in her mid-20s, just like coked off her tits, high off the adrenaline of having just won her Tony for Evita, and it's amazing. And the recording is shit, and it's really tinny, and it's like got all this like horrible echo, and you've got all like the band shouting at her and like people on the bar like screaming. It's amazing. So that Judy Garland at Carnegie Hall, which is quite different, but like similar energy. Judy Garland live at Carnegie Hall, which is 1961. I can't believe I don't know that off the top of my head. That's so embarrassing. And Barbra Streisand live at the Forum, which is like a really shit hot album that she did. Raising, I think it was in her back garden, and it was like the first album that the first concerts that she'd done since for like 20 years, and it's a really great album, really great live album. And there's an amazing album as well called Sibling Revelry, which is Anne Hampton Callaway and Liz Callaway, who was the voice of Anastasia, again, really nerdy, but they're sisters and they're both singers. And so they do this like cool, like Studio 54 style kind of cabaret together called Sibling Revelry. And it's worth listening to, but so it's kind of like what I've always wanted to like capture one of those albums and like put it into my own show. It's kind of like a little like cabaret that's kind of got one foot in that old school kind of 50s 60s cabaret world that doesn't really exist anymore, or has kind of turned into something different. Or I think now when you think of drag cabaret, it means something different.
Yeah.
So I guess like, no, this is the roots, kid. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of what I want to do. Did you enjoy it? I'd love to know.
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was
Great.
amazing. And I really enjoyed that. Obviously, there was a live musician as well. Fantastic, Connor. So is it different playing with a live musician to what you usually do then at your regular gigs?
Oh my God. Yeah, massively. I think um because it's like it's just what's so great about Connor as well is that like Connor and I have known each other for like nearly 15 years now. So we both went to Welsh College at the same time. Um, but oddly, like we both grew up in Chepstow and we never knew each other as children. Really odd. Really, really odd. Amazing. But odd. And so we met about 12, 13 years ago. And yeah, it's just nice because he just like we have a shorthand, right? So we have a shorthand where I can be like, I want it to sound like this. So I can say to him, I want it to sound like Patti LuPone live at Les Mouches, and he knows exactly what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Because we've got all those references. Yeah, or I want it to sound like Judy Garland and Carnegie Hall 1961. And yeah, he knows what that is. And he's really good at being like, okay, cool, like I'll write the theme tune, I'll sing the theme tune, he'll like, yeah, I'll just like play it, just get me some dots and I'll figure it out. Like he's very like, yeah, I'll do it, I'll make it work. We only had a day to like prep it, which was like crazy. So I just turned up at his house and like brought him a load of sheet music and a load of ideas, and we did it, which is lush. And we're talking about doing it again, possibly in London. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. One of the songs you performed there is a song I have seen you perform before, is Mine Hair. So,
oh my God, where have you seen me perform Mine Hair before?
When you did Transition with Justin Drag at the cabaret stage.
On the cabaret stage?
Was it Justin Transition? Yeah.
Oh, the MB show.
It was the MB show.
Yes. Yeah.
So why is that song so important to you?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. I know why you're asking me it, because I know you know the answer. No. So I sang it at the NB show. That wasn't the first time I sang it. So I sang it at Draglings in like 2022, start of 2022, maybe. Yeah, that I hosted, and I like royally fucked it up, and I was like, I don't want to sing that again. And then I sang it at the Emmy show, and yeah, basically the reason I did it is because, well, I didn't actually do it for this reason. I'm non-binary, and I came out as non-binary probably like 3 years ago, but I was like, oh yeah, I'll just use like he, they. And for a long time, I was more like, oh, I'm like genderqueer, I'm gender fluid, and like wasn't actually using the term non-binary. And then I did the MB show and I was like, what should I sing? I want to sing something that's a bit more like old school cabaret vibes because it's in the cabaret space. And I was like, oh, I'll sing Mine Hair. And I was like, oh, that's sort of about being non-binary, because the lyric is like, goodbye, sir. And that performance was like a week or two after I'd like stopped using he in my he/they. And I remember like specifically the moment that happened, like I was in London, really, and I was really, really drunk, and I got in the back of a taxi from like Old Compton Street to my friends where I was staying in Peckham, which is like really far away. And she was like, no, I'll pay for your taxi, it's fine. So I got in the taxi. I was really drunk, and I was like, I've just got a taxi in Old Compton Street, I can do anything. And I did like a really chaotic Instagram story where I was like, by the way, guys, I don't use a he pronoun anymore. And then I was like, oh, like, what have I done? So that is sort of why it's important to me. Like deep down, it's also because cabaret is my favorite musical of all time, probably. Yeah, I just think cabaret is like an endlessly, I mean, it's exactly what I was talking about before. It's like specific and like so relevant, like it's this current production that's happening is so much about, the sort of totalitarian state that we live in right now, but actually it's about Nazi Germany and all of that stuff. So yeah, I think Candron Ebb is kind of my I think I really suit Kendra and Ebb's songs as well. I think I really suit Kendra and Ebb's like vibe. I want to say shtick, but that would have been like the third time I've said shtick this call, which is not something I say super often, just to say.
So from performances I've seen to upcoming ones, so can you
Yes,
talk about Polly and Esther and where's that come from?
sure, I'll have a go. um, wow. um, so Tom and I, Polly and I, um, do you, like I don't think many people know our backstory. It's quite funny. So we were chatting on Grinder in like in lockdown. And we said like initially, so I was living really near Tom at the time. So I was living like the bottom of Clifton Street, and Tom lives like the top of Clifton Street. Not to like GDPR anyone, but yeah, now you know where we live. I don't know if they're in Moss, it's fine. But yeah, Tom was living there, and I saw them on Grinder, and I was like, oh my god, they're wearing a t-shirt with Lord on it, and I was in my Lord era at the time, and I messaged them, and I was like, oh my god, that's the t-shirt with Lord on it. And Tom later tells the story as they went down to their housemate and was like, I found my future husband, which was me. And we were chatting for ages, and like it was fine. And then I sort of went quiet. And the reason that happened is because I met someone else and I ghosted Tom. I know. so, so then I messaged them and I was like, hi, sorry you haven't heard from me in ages. I'm dating someone else, even though it's illegal to date someone because it was lockdown. So yeah, I told him that I was dating someone else, and I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. And he was like, oh, it's fine, we can just be friends. And then like we didn't talk to each other for ages because life. And then I messaged him and I was like, do you want to help put me into drag? Like a year later, I was like, hey, I'm that person that you spoke to. I'm that person you were maybe gonna marry. Yeah, and then yeah, and I think yeah, I did make up with Tom once, and then like we chatted a lot, and he just helped me sort of like build a persona and figure out like the scene, just like figure out the scene, and like because drag is like so mysterious, there's no like path,
Yeah.
you have to find someone to like. And I think Tom and I really hate like the terminology of like drag mother, drag daughter.
Yeah.
Um, it just kind of makes us cringe. But like technically, yeah, that is what
Yeah.
Polly is to Esther. Um, and so Tom and I sort of like just had a conversation, like we were hanging out more, and I just seen them do the first Triple Xmas show, and I was like, oh, I'm just about, and this was just as I was about to grandmother's closet, and I was like, oh, we should like think about doing a theatre show together. And he was like, yeah, I've been like bitten by the theatre bug, like let's do it. So yeah, we spoke to the Sherman. They gave us some space for research and development, which we did exactly a year ago this week, for 2 weeks. And again, assembled like a really beautiful team. So this amazing director called Nerida Bradley, loads of other amazing people, Connor being one of them. And yeah, I got in the room, played with some ideas, and it kind of like, I mean, chaos is like the key word when it comes to Polly and Esther, but it's very much about just like it's just about like being queer and just like finding your people. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
finding the people who just like help you be you.
Mm.
Which is very much what Tom did in terms of like helping me figure out who Esther was. And the thing is with Tom and I is like our drag is very different. Tom is like pop star chic,
Yeah.
and I'm like Judy Garland on a bad day. Do you know what I mean? But somehow, like somehow when we perform together, it always seems to go down a tree. It's very like chalk and cheese, like shouldn't work well together, but does. I know that isn't what chalk and cheese is, but like it's very much that kind of like, oh, we're both so different, ain't we, kid? Let's get into a duet and do perfect harmony. It's sort of like that
Yeah.
vibe. That is who that's who Polly and Esther are as characters. So there's like so much stupid stuff in it, but hopefully we're we're making like a solid point about like finding a family and like your chosen family, and how helpful that is as a queer person, like no matter what part of the journey you're on. Yeah, so I think it's one of those things that people watch it, and like people watch the R&D sharing, they were like, oh, it's really odd that you, i.e. Esther, is not the mother, because you're like this older persona. I'm like, yeah, but the point is that like queer family is not indicative of what the sort of straight family is, right? That in our twisted sort of reality, Polly is Esther's mum, because Polly is like, you know, Polly's a cougar, right? And Esther's like, Esther, I've been doing drag for like a fraction of the time that Polly's been doing drag. So yeah, it's, oh my god, I can't believe I just called Polly a cougar. Great. She's gonna hate it. She probably won't watch it. She hates me. No, I'm joking. And yeah, so we're going to Edinburgh. So I realize we're running out of time because I'm talking loads. But yeah, we're going to Edinburgh, which is wild, and it's my 3rd year in a row in Edinburgh, which is horrendous. I really want a year off next year. Just you wait. I probably won't. And it's going to be Tom's first time in Scotland, which I love. Like, really cute. I know. And we'll probably never speak to each other again come September.
But you're also heading to the Sherman as well.
That's right. So the reason we're going to Edinburgh is through the Edinburgh National Partnerships, which is like a scheme that the Sherman runs every year, where they support a show going up to the Fringe. So we're like previewing here, and then Pleasant. Are you coming?
Yes, I've got my tickets for Sherman.
Hooray! Yay.
So I know I've got my tickets, but where can people stay up to date with you and what's going on?
Oh, thanks for asking. You can find me on Instagram at Esther Parade, Esther Parade. It's really easy. And it's just my name. And yeah, that's kind of it, I think. I'm sorry I talked so much then. Are you going to edit this?
Yes, yeah, I'm going to cut it down a little bit.
Oh, good, yeah, because it's going to be really boring otherwise. Like, people will hate it.
But yes, that's all the questions I have. So as I started, thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with me. And I shall speak
Thanks for having me. I can't wait to see if I beat Nikki Knockers in views.
Speak to you soon.
I probably won't. Bye.